Welcome back. We are at Telematic Media Arts. My name is Clark Buckner. I'm a director here, and I'm glad to welcome you today to the second of our weekly artist talks in conjunction with the Archive to Come, a group show of short time-based works by more than 50 artists from across the country and across the world. Co-curated by me and Carla Gannis, who's going to be leading the event today. And today's event will feature presentations by Faiyaz Jafri, LaJuné McMillian, Laura Hyunjhee Kim, Luc DuBois, Sean Capone, Snow Yunxue Fu, Shaghayegh Cyrous, Sherie Weldon, Noth Liu, and I think that's it. We will be hosting another one of these again next week and ongoing on Saturday afternoons. And the show is available here in the gallery, as well as 2 online iterations on our website as a series of screenings and as a social VR space constructed by Carla here. So without further ado, shall I hand it over directly to Faiyaz?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Hi. Thank you, Carla and Clark, again, for setting this all up. This is awesome. And shall I just share my screen and start this? Yeah?
That'd be great.
All right, let's do it. All right. Hi, everyone. So that's my name. I am Faiyaz Jafri. I guess I was going to talk about my work today. So that's what I'm going to do. I feel like I've been going through a paradigm shift the last couple of months. So I guess I will just address that. So I always wanted to tell stories that everybody could read. And so I've always, for a long time, I've been developing a visual language or visual dialect more. And the components of this language are sort of, they are there's the vocabulary, if you will, and then there's the aesthetics of it. And does it work? Yeah, awesome. All right, so the aesthetics is really about is neo-archetypes, or sorry, the aesthetics is hyper-realism, which is sort of an embrace of digital materiality, and the narrative elements are neo-archetypes. So the work aims to create narratives utilizing intertextuality by exploring Jungian archetypes in the modern world and distilling these pop references of mass media and global culture into a visual shorthand. And these visual shorthands are called neo-archetypes, right? And again, the aesthetic that I use is called hyper-realism. I named it that before I knew there was a term like digital materiality, but it sort of goes hand in hand with that. The result is sort of an amplified and remixed visual language that's common, legible, but not entirely understandable. I'm trying to engage with dialogue with familiar visual codes and new visual dialect, and trying not to shy away from any kind of confrontation, really. So these are clips, or I guess sort of building blocks that I've used in one of my films. This is from Sway from 2007, and here I sort of explored the temporal aesthetic of the animated GIF, which is sort of, in a way, I think, a visual trope, because we've been so exposed to all these different short little clips and loops that we see on various modes online. It's these single loops and animated portraits, where it's the non-destruction of motion, of the motion trapped in a state of never-ending limbo, sort of creates new narratives by themselves. And what you see here is sort of the way that I approach that. So instead of creating a script or a story or a narrative, I was taking these little clips and these loops and just bringing them into a timeline and sort of do the thing that I call timeline sculpting, where I would just chop up as you would do with I guess with a piece of stone, and create narratives on the fly instead of like doing it with a predestined way. And again, going back to the idea of creating narratives that are comprehensible or legible, I would say, but not comprehensible. This is sort of what that tries to employ. This is the film that has been showing here at the exhibition, where again I'm going more and more. You can see that there's a clear visual digital aesthetic here, super shiny, non-realistic renderers, which I'm extremely allergic to. I prefer to just use the out-of-the-box renderer that comes. This is all done in Cinema 4D. This film was inspired, I guess I'll speak a little bit about this film because it was part of the show, of a conversation I had with Ruth Lingford about the penis of Jesus. She told me about this book that was written by Leo Steinberg, which was called The Sexuality of Christ in Renaissance Art and Modern Oblivion. And it's a discourse about why Jesus is always portrayed as a naked baby, and why his penis is always in full display, and why a lot of the other people in the paintings actually play with it. And it's all about creating sort of confirming the fact that Jesus is a human and is vulnerable, and because he has a penis, he is vulnerable, etc. And so taking that notion of vulnerability, which is not associated with men per se, or not at all, and sort of taking that, twisting that around, or moving, taking the opposite position in that. I combined this with this motion capture data of somebody playing guitar, and then take this motion capture data and then clone it many a times. I think there's like 30,000 naked boys playing air guitar. So penis plus is vulnerability, penis plus air guitar is super vulnerability. And so that's sort of, again, instead of using short clips and loops, the loops here are actually part of the motion capture data. And it's a very short piece of motion capture data that's being repeated over and over with just one continuous camera movement. So instead of a lot of cameras and cuts, there's no cut at all in this film, right? So the loop, this simple basic loop. I guess I also sort of shift away from traditional filmmaking altogether and traditional animation making. A lot of these films have no more keyframes. All of it is either procedural or motion capture data that I bring in. And then looped and cloned, and again, all procedural. So you can go back in and twist it around and manipulate it. It's more like twisting buttons than really doing manual animation. Right. So earlier this year, while quarantining, I took the concept of Jack and the concept of loops and neo-archetypes and hyperrealism, and applied this to other motion capture data, creating this this film called Leaders. It's an army of young women uniting. Again, a further exploration of ambiguous narratives, and again, new notes of film production here. I really strayed away completely from anything traditional. The building blocks were motion capture data, which were then cloned procedurally, sort of created small animated loops and GIFs that were then edited together. And the soundtrack was created using Euclidean patterns. So instead of me writing the music, I had it sort of generated by an algorithm. And the drum beats also were generated with an algorithmic drummer. So all of these were just, you set the parameters and then just let it play out and then tweak and turn it. I mean, in a way, you can go back to Ben Lepowski playing with an oscillator, right? Having a machine that has input and you playing around with that. And that is sort of where a lot of these techniques are going, which I find very exciting. So I guess I was asked to talk about my work, and so I was wondering what it was all about. I really, I'd like, what is it all? Because there are times when you do, and times when you don't. I think the very first time when I was asked to talk about my work, I had no idea what it. I thought I knew what I was going to say, but I had no idea. And now I was asked again, and I wasn't really sure this time. And so, what is it all about? And I think I was thinking about that. It's the evolution of the use of time. And thinking about the evolution of the use of time, I was thinking about Chantal Ackerman, Jan Dillman, Ozu, Paul Schrader's discourse on transcendental film, and then of course go to Deleuze and time and image movement, etc. And so I figured it's really, I feel like I need to go, or I am going in this direction. I've been cutting up faster and faster, but I felt like I needed to slow things down, or maybe go back to just animated portraits. And so just yesterday I finished my most recent film, which was really about that, about not editing and not cutting and not straying away completely from narrative, and really having people just wander around the screen, the democracy of the eye, right? So the visual narrative experience becomes more about the experience of watching the narrative, and the viewer is now sort of joining the movie, right? Slow cinema, boring cinema, Kiarostami, etc. Right? So I was really wondering if my work is going to a paradigm shift of letting go of it all and giving sort of the work back to the audience, or is it a temporary symptom of the pandemic and the quarantine, which is sort of slowing down time as all, and I think time will tell. And so this, I just finished this film yesterday, which is called Gently and Chainsaw. It's about a man and a chainsaw. It's slow cinema. It's working against the grain of cinema. Sort of turns its back on itself. Sort of turns on what movies do best, and it replaces the action with stillness and empathy with distance, and it becomes very introspective. And I have no idea what to think of this. I enjoy looking at this film and see where this is going. But this is pretty much what it is. And so yeah, I don't know where the work is going from here, but it seems an exploration that I found extremely interesting. And maybe after the pandemic, when time speeds up again, I will divert from this again. So that's all what I have for today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Faiyaz. Thank you. Hey, so so if you stop sharing, and then we'll go to our next speaker.
How do I get out of this? How do I stop sharing this? Hang on a second. Oh, there we go. There you go. Okay.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. Yeah. And so next we have LaJuné.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
I'll share my screen. Okay. Oops. Okay. So yeah, my name is LaJuné McMillian, and I'm a new media artist. And I work primarily through performance and installations, as well as other extended reality tools. I started this work while I was still in school, but then afterwards I realized that my access had changed dramatically. So I was thinking a lot about how to start creating tools and spaces where I can be seen, and also for my community as well. So yeah, and then I also started looking at a lot of different digital tools and softwares that I was using. For instance, this is FaceGen, and FaceGen is a character creation software where you can upload your pictures, and through an algorithm, it recompiles it for faces. And this tool is an example of racist technologies. So you can see at the bottom, all of the sliders are in like these really weird terms, just like reducing race to sliders. So yeah, that's another tool that I was using. And then I started looking at different motion capture databases that were online. A lot of my work was in performance, but I also when I transitioned into work in VR. I wanted to basically start creating projects where I knew like the movements were culturally specific. So yeah, I was looking at Mixamo and also Carnegie Mellon's online motion capture database system. And I realized that it had an extreme lack of culturally diverse movements. And then also in Mixamo, a lot of the movements and dances didn't really reflect the names. So this is actually a dance for hip hop. And we can clearly see that that's not, that is not hip hop dancing. But yeah, I was really interested in basically creating and building a space where I could be seen in the tools that I work with. So I created the Black Movement Project, which I'm now actually turning into a library. But through that process, I decided that I wanted to begin making spaces not only where the movers in that space, contributed their data, but I also wanted to be able to tell their story in the space as well. So basically, I started to also host performances. And through these performances, the contributors to the library, they wore motion capture suits. This is the perception neuron they're wearing. And basically, I was translating their movements in real time while they performed to different interviews that I did with them. So basically, through those interviews, we were able to create like soundscapes where we were basically placing in their story and having them move in that way. So I was really interested in how I could invite the audience in to learn more, not only just like the movement data, but also where those movements are coming from through different performers. And then from there, I was creating all of these different, I guess like abstract worlds where I would create characters for each performer. And basically I would like just create these different worlds based off of my connection and my conversations with them. And so, yeah, I began to become extremely interested in how I could also sort of like represent different spaces where we are free, and sort of just like navigating what that looks like, even though a lot of these technologies and tools that I use, I feel like every day are still problematic. So sort of just like trying to understand like what that looks like. And yeah, I mean, it was a really great experience for this first performance. And I realized that basically we need to start having spaces where I guess like quote unquote data can be interpreted in many ways. What this project and process has taught me this far is that basically we need to tell stories, and we also need to dive deeper into the data that we collect. And then from there, through working with different performers, I realized that I had to sort of basically take on that same level of movement myself. So I began to create different digital avatar versions of myself. This is like one of the first pieces, but the one that I actually am sharing is this one. So yeah, I've been interested in my own, I guess, digital presence, and also I began to become really interested in what it meant for me to be seen in these spaces. And yeah, and then that brings me to my last project. Right now I'm working with Marguerite Hemmings, who is a dancer. And we've been essentially both wearing motion capture suits while we are talking over Zoom. And through that, we do a lot of different mirroring and witnessing movement prompts for each other. And through that, we've been able to build a connection, an embodied connection, even though we are far apart. Right now I'm in Maryland and she is in Pennsylvania. So yeah, that was it for me. Thank you all. Gonna stop my share.
Fantastic, thank you. Last week when I was doing this, after every presentation, I'd go, wow. So 2 wows for 2 presenters. And thank you so much. Just a reminder to our audience, questions will be at the end. Some of you might want to, drop some things in the chat, but we will have an official questions and conversation session after everyone has presented. All right, so our next presenter is Lara.
Hi, let's see. Do you see this?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, great. There we go.
Hello, I'm Laura. No, hi. No, I'm Laura. My name is Laura. Hello, I'm Laura.
I'm Laura. This will be like a really quick Pecha Kucha style overview of everything I do. But every time I do one of these things, I feel like it changes and morphs and shifts, and I think that's the beauty of artist talks. So I am a Korean American artist, new media, digital performance, earthling, human, very much living in Boulder, Colorado at the moment. And a lot of my work starts from my kind of bizarre attempts trying to figure out what it means to live, what is the world that surrounds me, and through that trying to understand who I am. And a lot of those expressions, those kind of thought experiments get expressed through performance, performative lectures, new media, digital, remix, various types of forms of expression. And primarily a language through the body. So I need to think through making. I need to be tactile. I need to be experiencing things for it to inform what I do. And I'm very much interested in reimagining kind of like the human, non-human interaction that happens with technology, digital technologies, or whether it's the body as a technology and media. And that has kind of the tendency to mask the human on the other side of the screen, or what I sometimes like to say, post-buttonless world, where everything is so smooth, glossy, and sheer. And these investigations start from a lot of collaborations for me, collaborations with myself, including 12-persona research organization, which is called Synthetic Empathic Intelligent Companion Artifacts, SEICA Human Interaction Labs, or with artists such as Libby Rose Striegel, and also Collective Center for Emotional Materiality, with amazing human beings who are currently working together to talk about emotion and how technologies kind of create a specific type of belief systems in ourselves, and how labor and that kind of body and that kind of consideration of the whole holistic approach to technology is very necessary. I also collaborate with Mark America, and we published a book last year called Remixing Persona through Open Humanity Press, which talks about persona making in the digital era. And there's more information online if you want to look into that. So the gist of it is that I like collaboration, whether it's with myself, with others, like the situation that we're in right now, whether it's remote, whether it's we're together in person, it very much for me is working together. And that's a lot of how I talk about my work, or how my work gets to be how it's expressed eventually. And as you can notice so far, I scramble through talking. Language is not the most easiest thing for me. And so because of that, I wrote a book last year called Entering the Blobosphere, A Musing on Blobs. It's a book on blobs. It's a book about blobs. It's a book that takes blobs as a speculative concept, idea, an irresistible subject, a shape-shifting metaphysical thing. And also just the idea of that language is so limited in terms of expressing what we can possibly encompass or experience as human beings. And so the book encompassed a blob manifesto called a Blobifesto, various blob observations, And that kind of put me in the trajectory of thinking about what it means to be embracing the uncertain, the unknown, what it means to kind of feel things, but not necessarily being able to language it or put it into words. and being bilingual, Korean and American, like English speaking, language, I think, is the essence of blobbing. And so I like the idea of being able to shapeshift, morph the world around me through language. And when we come to technology, yeah, a lot of, even if we want to be more blobby and like weird and like bizarre and be more sincere sometimes, like we're still in the rectangle as we are right now. And I'm very much interested in how we can kind of like grab like that essence of what it means to be human or non-human and bring it forward through these technologies that shape us and kind of resist the environment that subjects us to feel certain ways, to think in certain ways, and kind of own that that agency of how we are operating in this current condition. And so my current project or things that I'm working on is surrounding this umbrella idea called the living lab, or a living lab, or living through the making, experimenting through life. And a lot of these experiments are very bizarre. Sometimes are through social media. It's through working out with Siri as a foam roller, or using a banana as a tool for gaining strength and reinvigorating your body. And so I'm very much interested in what it means to kind of have a gut feeling as an artist, what it means to speak from your emotions, and how that can be a very fertile place where research starts. And also to think about, to feel or not to feel is also privilege. To be able to ignore your feelings is also very much of a privilege, as so as technology or the internet of how we're connecting right now. And so I'm writing this whole thing about towards the philosophy of art. And I call myself a philosopher right now. I'm wearing the hat of a philosopher. And it's very much orienting my practice, and how Faiyaz, as you talked about, the whole idea of rethinking about your practice has been very much prevalent in my world over the past year. I had a near-death experience last year, which changed my body forever, and also psychology forever. And so that has been affecting a lot of how I think about what it means to be living, what it means to die, what it means to be feeling alive. And so that's where a lot of my practice is currently coming from. And little plug, next week I have an opening at Clark College about this whole concept. And I'm building out and writing out a whole thing called Philosophy that you can find online. It's still in the making, but there's drafts there that you could kind of look into if it vibes with you. And yeah, the project that I have at Telematic right now is Cricket World. It's a video karaoke of what it means to be a cricket in a cricket world, and kind of captures a lot of various emotions, but it talks a lot about emotional resilience, what it means to be bouncing back through hardship, to be able to even recognize that your body's going through hardship, or as a society, politically, we're going through hardship in itself, like recognizing that in itself and feeling it is the first step of change. And I don't know if I have more time, but I can show a little bit of this video that I recently finished called Soul Recycling and Raccoon Soul Cycling in Human Time. So it's yeah, I'll just show a brief thing of that.
It's a full moon evening, raccoons. Welcome to Soul Recycling. Today we'll learn how to survive in human time. Humans think you are a deceitful trickster, invasive pet, outlaw scavenger, disease-ridden mongrel, trash panda of the night, and may even call you a meso-carnivore, whatever that means. But don't let those humans decide who you are. You are your own raccoon, and you will own it. Your dark furry mask may trick them into thinking you're cute, often to take advantage of that survival mechanism. But you all know that less peripheral light helps you see better at night. Fun fact, did you know that human athletes wear dark makeup under their eyes as well for the same reason? Yes, you are a trendsetter. Be a proud raccoon. What's your goal? You have to see it before you see it in order to receive it. You are savvy, you are...
Okay, so that's it.
Thank you so much, Laura, for sharing your philosophy with us, and congratulations on your show. And next will be Luke.
Luke, you're on mute.
Oh, my voice is on mute. Okay, my sound should be shared. Let's try it. So I'm going to show some things I don't show very often, and this is a way to kind of start what I was sort of thinking of for the piece I made for this show. This is some software I made with some friends about, I don't know, creeping up on 20 years ago now. It's called Jitter, and the basic shtick is lets you play with image in real time, which these days is not particularly impressive at all, but back then maybe it was. So I'm going to just do something with my voice real quick. I'm going to say, my dog has fleas, testing 1, 2, 3. Okay, and so this is, well, my dog has fleas, testing 1, 2, 3. You guys can hear that, right? So this is sort of, you know, what my dog has fleas, what my voice looks like if you were to ask somebody who's in the business of saying, what does sound look like, right? So this is a sonogram. So the red line is time, and these little mountains are from low frequencies to high frequencies. Bob's your uncle, it's fine. The dirty little secret about this little piece of software, though, was I didn't actually record my voice. I turned it into an image, and then what you're hearing is it scanning the image back. So you can do all these things that you're not really supposed to be able to do with sound. Like, for example, there's no reason why the red line has to move. So you can do stuff like this. My dog has fleas. You freeze. You can go back. The dog has fleas. Testing. Here you go back forward. Really. Or you can say, you know what? It's a picture, so why don't I work? And then you're like, well, what does that sound like? This is what it sounds like. Right, so this is the kind of thing that we do with pictures all the time, right? We have these things called filters in Photoshop, and you blur your pictures. Why wouldn't you blur a sound? So in that spirit, I have a bunch of projects that I think of as portraiture, or portraits about music and musicians and the hidden structures of performance, and some of them are more like animations than cinematography. So I'm going to sort of show a bunch and then land on the thing I made for Carla and Clark. So this is a piece. This is a quartet that I wrote. Where the musicians are drawing musical structures are themselves informed by a class of algorithms called the Buckner systems, which
Luke, it's just a little hard to hear you over the audio. Yeah.
I'll make sure I fade it.
Yeah. So maybe say that again.
Okay, sure. Yeah, the basic idea is I've got 4 musicians driving this animation, and it's a little bit of a circular process. The music that they're playing is based on the algorithms you use to make rendered plants, right? So if they play it back, you get this stuff. That's a, you know, kind of more, you know, sort of animated version. But then I have a bunch of pieces that are about, you know, music and performance in time. So here's an old one. This is about 12 years old now. I took over the traffic island off of Union Square in New York City, 4th of July weekend, 2008. Collaborated with a performance artist named Leon Cifuentes. We spent 72 hours out there making a piece that we then accelerated to 72 minutes. So she's moving incredibly slowly. Everything that you're seeing in this film that takes a second in the film really took a minute. Everything you see that takes a minute takes an hour. And the sun goes up and the sun comes down and the sun goes up and the sun comes down. And before you know it, she's ready for a night out on the town. And this was part of a trio of pieces that I made about sort of staging these unwatchable performances and using time as a mechanism to kind of look at some things you don't necessarily see in performance. So the sequel to this, I did a project in New Orleans for the Prospect 2 Biennial in 2011. I got 350 high school marching band musicians to do a parade. they converged on a park from 5 different parts of the city, and I set up an AM radio tower on the top of a building. And so the drum majors were synchronized by click. So again, unwatchable performance. You could follow an individual band. You can only see 25% of the thing. You could hang out in the park where it ends, have everybody come in one at a time. Or you could turn it into this film. And so this movie is a bunch of remixes. I had a 60-person film crew kind of shoot it. And then the rounding it out, I did a project with the Contemporary Music Ensemble at the Manhattan School of Music. This is more like a classical piece, where I wrote a 4-minute piece of music that was deliberately intended to be heard at 1/10 speed. So you take a bunch of musicians and you film them using high-speed photography. You record them using high-speed sound. And so, it's a neat trick. What happens is musical vibrato becomes microtonal. So if you play a note on a violin, it goes, you hear it go, you know, time slows down. But the really interesting thing is that physical space expands. So I recorded this in my apartment. It sounds like it was being recorded in, I don't know, a church or something like that, which is an old music production trick that I lifted off of Berry Gordy, off the oral history of Motown Records. Berry Gordy used to be very good at lying about how the beautiful sounds on his records were made. And so if you asked him how he got the reverb on his vocalists, he would say he had a relationship with a church, you know, in Detroit that he would record in. But what he was actually doing was he was playing the sound out the stairwell and recording it down at the bottom, and he was playing the tape deck too fast. So when you slow it back down, it sounds like it's in this huge, expansive space. I have a bunch of projects in the same vein with different types of performers. So the kind of more, you know, kind of more avant-garde stuff. Like I've done portraits of experimental musicians in New York where they get to improvise for 5 minutes and turns into a 5-hour piece. So this is and then I've also done portraits looking at other types of performers. So this is a piece I did in 2014 with retired circus performers in Sarasota, Florida. So these are normally 5 screens, but you can sort of see what's going on here. So you get to see a kind of insight into the physicality of their action and the physics behind what they're doing. And these are these kind of 5 screens that are all synchronized and they're meant to look like 19th century Strobridge lithography kind of circus ads. So getting to the thing that I made for this show, this is a little improv that I did on guitar and synthesizer for Carla and Clark. And what I did was I made the computer kind of simulate a record lathe. So what is a computer doing? What would a record etcher be doing? He's cutting. So and it's kind of cool. So that's what I have.
All right. Thank you so much, Luke.
Yeah.
That was an abrupt end. So, so our next speaker is Noth. Are you ready, Noth?
Yes. Hi.
And welcome. I see some new people. Yes, go ahead, Noth.
Share my screen. Can you all see my PowerPoint? So.
Yes, we can. Let's go.
Okay. My name is Noth Liu, and I'm the creator of Let's Chat Like This. And I'm a multimedia artist and designer now in New York. And I've been very interested in emotions, especially the complexity of human emotions. So I always want to visualize them and to discover how people's emotions interact with each other. So I aim to create a system that can realize this thing. So before Let's Chat Like This was created, there's actually some small objects that promote it happen. So in my MFA study, I also learned to do some learn some program like Unity, the game engine, and some interactive media tools, and also learned some programming. So I was very interested in creating some art games, or it can be called game art. So they are, some of them are 2D games, some of them are.
Noth, I want to interrupt you for 1 second. We're just seeing your presentation screen. If you're changing slides, we're not seeing it.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, I'm sorry, because I was looking. Yeah.
Let me.
I was like, oh, you're staying at that first slide, but I hear you clicking.
Okay,
so I think you're changing slides. Yeah.
Okay. Let me try to.
Sorry for not catching that sooner.
Okay. Now here's.
So we're seeing your Vimeo. Okay, cool.
Yeah. These are some games I tried to create with Unity engine, and some of them are made by processing. They are very simple interactive games, and I also created some audiovisual pieces and some VFX and some video arts, and also some other stuffs before Let's Chat Like This. Sorry, I'll share again because I want to show my PowerPoint. So here's Let's Chat Like This. It's my MFA thesis project. And according to my interest to visualize human emotions, I began to do some research about new emerging online chatting tools in recent 20 years, like emojis, gestures in VR chat. That's what I recently found. And features like virtual backgrounds and camera filters in Zoom meetings. So this example made me being curious about what future communication tools will be like. So I future instead of communication in a more variable way. So chat like this is designed to provide experience that surpass the one that those traditional online chatting platforms provide. So I foresee a future communication of people using moving images to communicate by using their emotions. Oh, I forgot to so I then create a storyboard that shows how this project, how people interact in this project. So when the first person come in front of the camera, the visual will change according to this person's moods. That means it will capture the first person's facial expressions. And with the join of the second person here, the visuals will also changes in different aspects like colors, shapes, or some other visual effects based on the second person's facial expression when the two people's shows the similar mood, the 3D shots will transform into a complete 3D object like this flower. And based on the famous mirror mode map, I tried to create 3 basic types of 3D models to represent the happiness, anger, and sadness of there from left to right. And then I also decide different states of one single 3D scene. For example, this happiness scene, you can see on the right, it's a recognizable scene. It only shows up when the 2 people shows the similar happiness mood. But most of the time, normally it will remain 3D shots that shows up when only one people shows happiness mood. And here's the software connections. I used mainly 5 programs to make the interaction happen. So first, CamTwist capture live videos from Zoom meetings. It has the screen capture function, and then it feeds the live video into Face OSC, which is created by Kyle McDonald. It's a program that can can generate facial feature data from the live video, and then these facial feature data will feed into processing software, and the processing will
We're having a few connection issues now, just to let you know.
So, some issues will be changed. Also,
Okay.
oh, sorry.
I think you're
That's
back.
maybe some internet connection.
Yeah.
I don't know if you.
I think she's frozen.
Yeah, I think you're a little
Connections.
frozen.
Do you think?
Frozen in time.
I know. Since many of the earlier conversations were about time and remapping time and
Can you?
what is Zoom time? I think you're back now. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
I still
right.
haven't finished my internet problem.
We were talking about this the other day. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So here's the software connections. And so in conclusion, you can see this is the main interface of this chat like this. On the top right corner and top left corner, they are visualizations of facial features from processing. And here's Carla and me try to interact with this piece. So this project is my own assumption of how what future communication will be, and also it can be a social distancing installation during the COVID pandemic. It helps people to connect emotionally and also increase the intimacy and empathy between people.
Okay, I think we had one more freeze, if it's not just on my end. Now you're back.
Oh, sorry, what? It's still not. So that's my conclusion, and that's all about Let's Chat Like This.
Thank you so much, Noth.
Thank you.
And I've had so much fun interacting with your piece. So
Yeah.
thank you for including that screenshot of me in there.
Thank you.
All right, super. So next, Sean.
Oh,
You're
hi.
next. Hi.
Does the microphone, is it all right? It's not creating feedback?
Microphone sounds really good.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
You're
Cool.
really clear.
Hi, Internet, coming at you live from Brooklyn. No, I don't have the energy for a bit, but I am in Brooklyn. I'm a New York City-based artist. my name's Sean Capone. I've been working in digital animation in one way or the other for about 25 years. I started at University of Texas at Arlington. My first job out of college was actually working for a video game company doing 3D character animation and level design, game design, stuff like that. So, there's a lot to cover, but I think I'd like to just fast forward to the last couple of years, this year in particular. I would say that my work travels across two main tracks. One uses 3D animation and motion capture in a series of work which I call Avatar Poetics. And that is part of that the piece which is in the archive to come is related to that work, where I'm using kind of digital puppets, 3D characters, 3D avatars as a vehicle to express, kind of a philosophical stand-up, I guess, kind of comedy, absurdity, wordplay, poetics. These are all things that kind of inform my sensibility. And I started doing that work, I'd say around 2014, 2015, after the social media thing had really kicked into gear. And I found that that I was doing a lot of more writing again, that I was doing a lot of, kind of creating different characters to represent my various online personas. And that's when I decided to kind of shift gears in my work and, kind of get that back into my art, get myself back into the art. So I'm just going to quick share. So the piece that's in the archive to come is called Teotihuacan, and that's an anagram for online doomsday prepper accelerationist slang, which stands for the end of the world as we know it. So I took that, I made a bad pun about it, and I created this character named Teotihuacan, who's a talking cartoon virus, delivering kind of a philosophical monologues and advice about, life, existential nature, the kind of mindset of anxiety that we've been in this year, related to COVID, related to the pandemic. I'm interested in the idea of these characters existing in kind of virtual realms or in kind of unknowable, scales of experience that aren't necessarily human, trying to talk to us, kind of from beyond that void. So it's kind of a science fiction in a way. So I'll share this screen from, it's kind of a sneak peek of the next chapter of Teotihuacan, not the one that's in the show, which you can go and watch. So I'll just share a couple of minutes from the next chapter of it, if I can figure out how to do this. All right. Is that full visible?
This is very cool.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Okay. So this is kind of visually advanced quite a bit from the original, from the first chapter, which is in the show.
Absorb that energy.
Oh,
It's like,
sorry, the cue was bad.
I absorb that energy. It's like I eat it. We see the dance and assume it's a sickness. Rather, than an enchantment, used to heal the dancer. Separation from the reading of nature has made us insane, stranded in immaturity. We have no idea what the word even means anymore. Nature has become a poison zone, full of distress and diseases, accidents. So we no longer even think of the wild as a place of poetry, but just as one of anxiety.
So that's a little bit of the next chapter of Teotihuacan. I hope that, did that stream okay? Wasn't too stuttery, I hope.
It was actually quite smooth. Yeah.
Okay, great. So yeah, if you're interested in seeing more of that stuff, there's a lot of it on my website. Before I mentioned that there were kind of two distinct sides to my practice. Oh, you know what? I should just back up regarding the avatar poetic stuff. Even though I'm working, using motion capture, using animation, using technology, I'd like to say that I'm not particularly interested in technology, by which I mean, in my work, I'm not particularly interested in interrogating it. I try to create these characters and create their monologues from the point of view that that they're kind of fully formed, that they're independent entities who are perhaps aware of the simulation of the environment that they're in, but it's their reality. And so I want to kind of take the next step beyond just interrogating the technology, interrogating the means, and try to fully inhabit like the consciousness of these characters and how they might choose to express themselves from within their environments that they supposedly inhabit. And this just goes back to, the fact that I was raised that I grew up in the 80s, and it all just goes back to like Max Headroom and, kind of cyberpunk aesthetics, William Gibson, of, consciousness of AI, but being expressed through a very satirical and, kind of comedic lens, a kind of goofball lens, because I'm a goofball, as you can tell. Anyway, but so the other side of my practice, is kind of more in the public art realm. About a decade ago, which is when projectors, flat screen LEDs really started becoming ubiquitous in, and cheap, in urban space, in studio space. So, I thought that that video was going to be the next kind of like great medium for public art. That the video was now an architectural kind of concern. And this kind of tied in with my interest in expanded cinema, the idea of like immersive video, immersive cinema actually like being like a thing. So I kind of started a whole other kind of track with my work doing public art. So I'll share with you here the latest piece that I just finished like last week. It's playing right now in Berlin at Kunstlerhaus Bethaniel, curated by Robert Seidel, who is, one of the kind of masters of this particular art form of projection art, projection mapping, public art and everything like that. So let me, I'll share an excerpt from this. And yeah, let's see. Okay. This is designed as an infinite loop. It's about 6 minutes long, but I'm not going to play the whole thing. But the idea is that it just kind of play it. You set it up to play and it'll just go forever.
Sean, just for purposes of time, we probably want to, this is really lovely.
Great. Yeah, so that was really all I was intending to, just one last note that the visuals, the kind of visuals in that piece, Molecular Clock, kind of shares a similar conceptual space with Teotihuacan, in that they were both created this year and influenced by the kind of visual discourse of COVID, which we were seeing in the media, or at least that I was paying attention to in the early days of the crisis. You know, all this kind of microbiological imagery and simulated medical imagery. So both of these pieces, even though that, you know, are both in a way a response to that.
Right. And I know at the opening there were other issues that we discussed, and so after everyone presents, I really look forward to the conversation where we can like dive deeper into a lot of the issues that you all have raised or covered or are exploring in your work. Thank you so much, Sean. Next we have Shaghayegh.
Thank you, Carla and Clark, for this amazing opportunity. Let me actually share my screen. Okay, perfect. Well, my name is Shaghayegh Cyrous. My name means red poppy, and it's a symbol of love in Persian poetry. I feel like I have to just start with that most of the time. I am Iranian American multimedia and social practice artist and curator, and living in the Bay Area for the past 9 years. I usually use different interactive time-based strategies, such as social engaged art, social practice, live video performances, live video chats, and multimedia installations. I love to create poetic spaces for human connection and for human connection within themselves, with one another, and also with a larger society. One of the other things that I'm always obsessed with is the experience of cross-cultural communication and translation that is addressing the permanence of distances that is caused by political and cultural power dynamics, and how I usually find that gaps or bridges that when you know, politics have a huge effect, or culture have a huge effect on people. This, I will just like go very briefly so I can get into what I have in the show. This is, for example, this is one of the projects I did years ago, Unison of Sky. It was a live video performance between Iran, Tehran Contemporary Museum of Art, and California College of the Arts, and it was 5 days after nuclear deal that happened between both countries. So people were seeing each other live and sharing their wishes with each other, and we were translating simultaneously. I also love languages, so I sometimes I have a body of work that I create spaces with a collaborator, that we create a space for people to speak with each other in their mother tongues without knowing what they are saying or what they're doing. One other thing that I'm always really interested into is the compression of time and space, and how it's affect the life of refugees and immigrants, basically, specifically. This is a window to Tehran piece that it was a live video installation. Because of the time difference between Iran and San Francisco, 11.5 hours, I could be able to almost sync the sunrise and sunset of San Francisco and Tehran, basically. So people could see the sunrise here, and then there were a huge window that they could come out and see the sunset. I think so I was really into all these ideas, and I think after the Trump election, my work kind of like shifted more towards talking about politics, which is really interesting to me. I mean, I'm already I have an activist sense, but it was interesting for me to see myself between two governments that I was suffering from, basically. This is called The Sun Will, this is called The Closest I Could Get to the Sun. It was a project that, it was an installation that I actually created right after the travel ban, and it was a conversation so people could actually hear why I had to move to United States, but at the same time they could see a Skype live with my mom that she was showing me the garden, that she was saying it's okay because I will come back. And most of my works are also time-based, so the shadows were moving based on the sunrise as well. And more after, one other interesting things that happened actually during this time of past 4 years was that I felt like there are a lot of information that's coming and a lot of situation that is coming from Iran that a lot of artists here also, or like people don't want to listen to, because it would create a misconception of, oh, if I say, for example, the government of Iran doing something, then that means I'm a Trump supporter or something like that, because of the all play that was happening between Trump tweeting and also the government of Iran and also everything. So I think I started to be more vocal through the political prisoners, my friends who are in prison, and what was happening. This was video performance that I was projecting the face of the political prisoners on people's face, basically to show that you might be next, which I was also like super afraid of because I didn't see my parents and family for the past 9 years. This other project of mine was called The Sun Will Rise the Next Day. It was a cube that people could see the basically people could see the light, and they couldn't see anything else unless they come closer. They come closer and see the names are going and flowing under body. And this was 427 names of political prisoners that I work with, a human rights organization that we found. It was, and it's interesting because whenever they invited me, it's kind of related to this show as well. Whenever they invited me to do something, then I realized, okay, no one's talking about what's going on with Iran because of this misconception. So I was like switching, talking about what's happening. So people were playing with the name. Some people suddenly realized who they are. And after playing, they were just like shocked about or seeing like how many people are currently actually are suffering because of expressing what they want. This video that I have, Beyadar is or remember, it's super interesting because I wanted to present this video first. And again, at last minute, I changed my video. This one was the video that called Cycle. It was a video that I actually made during the pandemic. And it was more about, I went towards the whole idea of why we are in this universe, and kind of like got influence from Persian poetry, Rumi's philosophy. And I was reading Kelilo Damne, which is a fable stories. So I was like already with that idea of like why we are here and everything like that. And then last minute I realized that actually today is the anniversary of last year's huge protests that happened in Iran. This is kind of like that happened in Iran, and it was they shut down the internet for 6 days, and there were, I don't know if you can. So the one interesting things was I found myself just talking more directly about what's going on in Iran, because I felt like no one here wants to hear it, because they were thinking about exactly like that misconception that was happening. So and this was also one of the things that was also a challenge, because I was after doing video installation, I went more in towards creating videos as well, and how I wanted to show what's going on. So basically, at the very beginning, it's showing the exact experts that came out from Iran, and then it goes towards the names that I found. These names that you can see, they all got killed by the government, more than 1,500 people. And these are just a few names that actually Amnesty International just released based on the information they got from the family. So it's going on and on. And for this, I was really interested into the fact that this is towards at the end of the video that you can see the names, and it's look like the end of the names titles that come up, and these are all people who got killed basically. So yeah, that was it. And most of my yeah, so that was it, that I kind of like wanted to be in this archive, specifically since you mentioned about the archive. But and I won't go towards my other projects, but in general, most of my projects are about this compression of time and space, and how basically our how we are actually using our five senses. What does it mean for immigrants? I mean, now we are in the COVID right now, we are actually can hear and see each other, but we cannot touch. And what does it mean psychologically on our brain? So these are kind of like a other body of works that I'm having. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. It's just my brain is whirring as each of you present, and I'm finding all of these different kind of connections in your work. But I'm also very happy that you selected this work and amplified, you know, this situation in Iran. Next, we have Sherie. Sherie, are you there? Yes. Okay.
Here we go. I wanted to talk about how I got to my work. Let me see. Let me move this over here. Okay. My work is comes heavily influenced from reading David Deutsch and talking about the parallel universe, and also finding various themes about psychology, and through that about racism. And so, you know, my work is starting to become heavily very technological. Most people that know about my work know that I started out doing a lot of map making using QGIS and other various map making software, and infusing those with images of victims of police brutality and racism. And so this piece right here was like one of the first pieces that I sort of did. I went to Chicago, and I thought about metaphysically being there, and also visiting the areas of where Black women and various people had been victims of racism, victims of violence. And so I created this piece to sort of reflect that. And it was really interesting in starting at this place, because it gave me a wide scope to sort of think about how to get started, and the effect of actually being in those environments where women have been victims of femicide. Well, when this project came about, the archive, I thought about how I could sort of represent or show my work in a different sort of transitioning that work, talking about the pandemic, and as well as racism. And so when I thought about enigmatic, one of the things I thought about was when I talked about the parallel universe, being influenced by David Deutsch, reading his book, The Infinity Beyond Infinity, was the cessation of space. And so from the drone of like showing like the wide space of Chicago, I thought about being in this void, and how we all could be, how we are all connected through medical science and through systemic racism. And it's really interesting that I'm talking about this today because unfortunately, I just returned home from being in line at CityMD. I was in contact with someone that became infected with COVID, and they passed on the information. I wasn't in contact with that person, I was in contact with somebody else. And my experience was interesting because I created this piece like around, thinking about the systemic racism and thinking about the pandemic. And here today, I was trapped in that space of not knowing if I had been exposed. And also, I was also profiled and asked certain questions. There were people that were going in ahead of me. And when the girl came to me, she stopped me and said, are you insured? And I said, yes, I'm insured. And she said, well, what is your insurance? And I said, I had to tell her. So I think about taking this piece further and, working on that about actually, now that I've experienced what it is like to think about actually being infected with COVID, and also being, subjected to being asked if I was insured before I gained entry to CityMD on 14th Street. But what I wanted to bring about was the fracturing elements and them coming together because, like I said, whether we're all experiencing this tough medical trauma right now, and whether we're experiencing this racial trauma, we all do come together, and we all are bonding together, and to sort of cope and to change the system. So my work really does with that. I mean, I don't want it to be, it's not a piece where it's a piece where it makes a comment on society, but it also shows how we can all come together and how we're all affected. As far as creating the audio, when you think about the audio, I know I was asked, did you do the work first or did you do the audio second? And I started to get into a lot of, during this pandemic, I started to get into a lot of work with modular synths and thinking about and experiencing and playing with that and the kilohertz and thinking about how that affects the work, and also to talk about the anxiety, but also that movement that moves through us, that audio, that frequency that moves through us as we hear, as we talk about, as we receive the information, we receive we receive what is a lot of noise and how that moves through our bodies. So that's basically what I wanted to talk about, that my work and how I transitioned from map making to visiting areas of location of systemic racism and police violence, and then also going into the 3D realm and sort of bringing all those elements together in sort of a space to talk about, to represent that. So, where are you at? Yeah. So anyway.
Sherie, thank you so much. And particularly, as we were texting before, it seems like it was a pretty difficult day. So I speak for everyone. I speak for myself. I don't want to speak for everyone, but I for myself, I really appreciate your still making it and giving such an important.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay, next is Snow.
Great, I will share my screen. All right, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
Looks
so,
good.
Well, hi everybody, I'm Snow. I'm the last artist to share in this wonderful just meetings of, different other artists. Some of you guys I know, some of you I know of your work, and then meeting you for the first time online. It's just been really incredible to see your practice and of course the work that you've shown in the show. Thanks so much for Carla and Clark to make this happen, and I'm glad that we can do something like this even when we're not physically meeting with each other. So I'm gonna just kind of briefly talk about who am I and my practice first, and then I'm going to go a bit more in depth with the work that I'm showing in the Archive to Come exhibition, as well as the body of work that's related to that. And if there's a little bit more time, there's a bit of a sneak peek of some of the stuff I'm working on lately. So I'm just actually gonna kind of leave the presentation open like that so I can navigate through my slides easier. So my name is Snow. I am a Chinese American new media artist and also a professor at NYU alongside with Carla and Luke and yeah, some of the others. And so it's been nice being in the community of the new media artists. I started out more in Chicago, so I got a MFA degree, I think 2014 now, and Claudia Hart, who's also here, was one of the very important person in my life who really opened up, I think, the medium of 3D to me. I formerly was a painter, and once I kind of really got involved into 3D and new media, I really take it as this very contemporary method of expression, right? And I'm of course bringing in a lot of historical painterly references, philosophy, and now specifically post-photographic explorations into my body of works that's in general dealing with the universal aesthetic and definitive nature of the techno-sublime. And a lot of my work are shown in a wide range of spaces. I love that. Not just sort of in the animation realm. I'm not just right in a gallery museum. I'm also in a festival. And yeah, now most of my work are shown online, as probably many of you guys are experiencing that too. I did come from a Chinese artist and art educator family. So I didn't realize the uniqueness of that, I think, really until I become into becoming an adult, and the unique kind of experience my parents provided me, and just like openness and forward thinkingness that they had. I know that quite a few of you sort of knows me for a while, but you've probably never seen me, even though you might have heard from sort of like little Snow painting, doing art when she was young. So you're in here for a treat, right? Waiting till the last artist. So this is actually an image of me when I was doing painting performance in an art cultural institution in Shanghai, and that's a painting I've done when I was 3. They're usually very big, and they're kind of this like watercolor, almost like, I think they, there is an immersive quality to them because I was really small. And this was one of my paintings that actually got collected by the National Art Museum, not gallery, one translation of China, which is something that I kind of had to like wrestle with, because this was a painting I did when I was 5, and it was, collected by this very prestigious Chinese art museum. And then, I sort of had to understand like who I am, sort of beyond my painting and my sort of experience in my childhood. Nevertheless, super grateful. So just kind of jumping a few examples of some more recent artwork. This is a still frame from my VR piece called Karst that I started in 2018 and finished it 2019. And there are 3 scenes that I've set up where you can teleport in between them. So those are the 3 ones. So the first one looks more like a cave, and you're given kind of this wireframe hand, and you are able to sort of explore and going, within this very, to me, very unique space, since I actually first got to experience when I was also a kid. I think maybe 4 years old, and looking back, I really had a experience of the sublime, where I was extremely attracted by the environment, how beautiful it's being lit, because I don't know, otherwise it's just a complete black space, and also this concept of like this cave has existed so much longer before me, and it could really literally kill me then if I don't escape or something falls on me. And then I really thought that VR was such a good tool, or just kind of visual digital imaging, 3D imaging, such a really great tool, because I've always sort of trying to, I think, bring a lot of my experience onto canvases or onto materiality, but to sort of again provide the experience for my viewer. I mean, it's probably a little bit laggy that you're seeing now through the internet, but once one can wear the headset, you're really experiencing the 60 feet ceiling that I was sort of experiencing as a child, and the overwhelmingness, right? I feel like there's almost this interesting liminal but 1-to-1 ratio that VR digital space can kind of provide. And this piece has sort of a lot to do with the idea of giving access, and also sort of preserving a sort of disappearing nature, right? Not only that cave like this is being housed big data hardwares in China, right? So really interesting, so that nobody can kind of be given access to a cave like this as a tourist, but then your personal data are in there, but then the cave is also sort of changing, right, because of the heat and everything, and sort of in a similar ways that human interaction on a larger scale also affects sites like Glacier, which I also was fortunate to get to visit some of the glaciers a few years ago, and just kind of seeing the amazingness of it, but also it really is disappearing right in front of me, right? So I really wanted to capture that, and through this image, again, you're not seeing is it's really high up, and in the VR goggle, you are able to climb up, or you're able to go into this kind of maze-like environment. And then the last part of this piece is a heart chamber. So sort of providing access, and also thinking about the material world as something that fleets, and that our own body is one such parts too, right? We're not that separate from what we call nature normally, and then we are giving access to otherwise very hard place to go to, right? And of course, it's not it is indexical, but it is not a representation. I'm not sort of going for the super realistic, although 3D as a medium can provide that, right? So I like that sort of fluidity that more relating kind of to me as a painter, where I can go in and kind of create everything as I want to. And then I'll kind of just jump to another piece that is also a VR piece. This is a screen, this is a photo documentation of one of my other VR piece that's finished more recent years, called Trench, where I've set up a virtual bottom of the ocean, where you're encountering in a very small amount the coral reef as one may expect, but very sort of soon within the explorations, you are getting a lot more kind of trash object that is being textured by glitch. And while you are in the VR headset, you can sort of encounter events where there's either a sound interruption or a visual interruption, again, sort of capturing this, I think, both physical change, but also psychological, emotional, and even spiritual change that human as sort of a collective are having onto the world, and how that is a cyclical sort of relationship back onto us, and then some other work. Let me see. Kind of wanna. Okay, yeah. So maybe jumping a little bit more towards the work that I am making for. I've put in the Archive to Come exhibition. I know that my time is winding up. So there's actually a series called the Galaxy series. This is one of the piece actually called Basque, where not only in this work, but also I'm just gonna go to the video where my piece that's in the show is, and I wanted to kind of show you the screen-based version first, but then I have also a VR interactive version, on my Vimeo, and relating to the idea of the archive, and also just the absurd amount of images that is generated or designed from data, specifically towards galaxy, Milky Way, right? And so I use them as sort of the base to generate particles, and so the sort of millions and millions of particles really is in a way parallel with the amount of data and technology and information that is needed for actually making those kind of images to begin with. So we are pretty familiar with this very image. I think you will recognize, right, the black hole image. Not too long ago, it was really marveled as this amazing accomplishment, right, of I think humans collaboration with technology and each other to kind of give us this very rectangular shaped image of a black hole. And therefore I brought it into the simulation space, the Maya space. I really want to highlight that, and therefore sort of reversing, right, or maybe more so providing a meditative digital space for us to sort of understand just a sneak peek of understanding of sort of the process and information, and therefore sort of pointing, I think, back to our position within the world, right, our scale sort of change and differences, and then I'll just kind of one last thing I wanted to show. So this is really something kind of just came off of the burner, so to speak. It's still not completely finished, and I'm still kind of tweaking. It's probably also going to be laggy as I show it through the internet, but this is the Fire series that I've been working on, and again, sort of working with both the images that you can find online of a lot of forest burning, especially in recent years, also relating to sort of like my own experiencing sort of fire in the forest a few years ago when I was doing a family travel, and then how sort of kind of translating both the experience and the images we see online into back into a virtual space, so that people can kind of have this more I guess immediate, right, like experience with that. So I think I'm gonna pause that for now and end my little presentation here. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Snow. Fantastic. Wow. I just have to take a deep breath. I am just so immensely grateful that you all agreed to participate in this show and that you all are here today. And I've so appreciated your sharing the ideas and concepts that fuel you, your passions. It's just been truly amazing. We do have some other artists from the show. A few had to leave because we've been going for quite a while. I just want to say hello to other artists who aren't speaking today, but will be speaking in coming weeks. So if I leave anybody out, we have Darren, Lynn, Christina. Is there anyone else who didn't present today, but who was here earlier? We had Laura and Yulia. And Laura number 2. Okay. Yeah. So with the time we have left, usually we wrap this up after about 2 hours. So we've got about 20 more minutes. But, you know, if there are any questions, I've been seeing some great things going on in the chat. Or if any of the other artists from the show also, you know, want to share anything in this last 20 minutes, that would be great. And Clark, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Well, good. I hope that we can have questions. And can you hear me?
Yeah. Can hear. Yep. Can hear you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your presentations today. And I've got a bunch of questions, and I'm glad to start this off. But I also hope that you all will feel free to ask questions of each other, and that we can open up the floor if you are so inclined. You know, when Carla and I put this show together first, we were in the midst of her Wunderkammer project, and COVID-19 set in, and George Floyd's was murdered, and the social justice movement, Black Lives Matter, exploded, and the Trump years were just, you know, spiraling off their axis. And we started to reflect on the pertinence of the Wunderkammer to the crises that we were in the midst of. And in a way, it was this concept of the archive that allowed us to extrapolate further. But specifically, I mean, I revisit this here now because we were thinking about the RK, or the archive, in terms of the RK, and the sense of foundations, and the way that archives are, they found discourses, and they found institutions, and they found practices. I say that because I don't think that coming into this, I would have anticipated how sort of fundamental the concerns of your presentations would be. That there was sort of this remarkable continuity, or these connections, but as a number of people talked about time, a number of people talked about space, talking about life, talking about nature, and maybe in the mix at different points, emotion. And in a way, that's the way that I've been formulating my questions, in part because, again, I think they speak to a number of your different projects. But I thought I might start by just asking you, Sherie, you were talking about your practices having begun in map making, and I got the sense that you were saying that it had developed and changed, and perhaps, right, gone in a new direction. But I wonder, maybe I'm mistaken in that. Were you in fact saying that you are still involved in considerations of map making, and this question about systemic racism and the medical institutions, the medical discourse, and the piece in the show that's related to it, that's again talking about the body in space as a mapped space. Am I right? And could you say more about that, about your understanding of space and history, I suppose?
Yes, and the reason why I've sort of I'm still making maps, but I think the reason why, or why I've been moving towards putting human elements, even though they're all human elements, is because, you know, I want to see more of the people or the human body in the work. because I think when I was making the do-rags and I was using the map making and I was using QGIS and Esri, and I was taking these locations and downloading these shape files and using the scientific data to create these maps, talking about systemic racism, they were very cold, and I just seemed like they're not connecting, and people are not able to sort of the work hasn't been able to find a way to talk about it, you know. And I think that by using 3D mapping and doing 3D scanning, now you can see the human body as an object, okay, as an object versus seeing like, because you know, what did we see all last week with the talking of Trump and Biden? They're showing shape files, they're showing maps, they're showing how you know, red states are turned to blue states, and that's exactly what I did when I was making the map making. I was downloading the track files and the block groups, and I was inserting the images and creating imagery to make my own maps to sort of identify and locate those environments. But now I'm really intrigued with you know, showing Black bodies, showing Black objects, and moving into a different part of space, because I don't want to rely on what has been done before. I want to transcend that. And that's why I'm moving towards doing 3D scanning and you know, using 3D mapping.
Yeah, I have to say, it's very vivid, and the presentation enriches my understanding of the work. But it's as though you're talking about mapping now, not objectively, say, right, from a third person, but more through the embodied phenomenology of being mapped.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, very compelling. You know, Luke, in your work, you talked about time as a fundamental consideration, and I wondered if you might say more about time in relationship to the unwatchable performance. It's that idea of like the unwatchableness of it. Like, is that just a phenomenological kind of condition? It goes on for too long, or because there's something that's kind of almost like a Buñuel film or something like that, like something that's making it impossible to watch, you know, or something that's elusive. Yeah, can you say more about that?
Yeah,
so the time and the unwatchable.
Yeah, so the trio of videos that I showed that were sort of riffing on that, the ideas came from different places. Like one of the, you know, one of the things that I always think is interesting is when people make portraits of musicians and they take photographs of them. And so you're like, okay, so you just took away the one dimension in which they operate, right? If you freeze time, you can't actually hear anything. And so I was sort of thinking, I was sort of riffing on that, and some of it, you know, some of these ideas came from like older stuff. Like the Marigny Parade was inspired by, you know, like Charles Ives. You know who that is, right? So Charles Ives was a, you know, sort of early 20th century or late 19th century, early 20th century American composer who had all sorts of wacky ideas based on the potential of radio and electricity. And a lot of them were basically like bar napkin sketches, right? And one of his projects that he proposed was to do a citywide parade, get all the marching bands in a city, synchronize them by radio, march them around town on, I don't know, 4th of July or Veterans Day or something. I don't remember the idea, but he never did it. And so for the Marigny Parade, we decided to do it. And we decided to do it as a fundraiser, or as a piece of, you know, kind of cultural placemaking for an after-school program for at-risk youth in New Orleans. So we raised, I don't know, $68,000 for this group called the Roots of Music in New Orleans. It's an after-school program for middle school kids who pipeline into these high school bands, right? So the idea was I got some of these amazing bands to play this piece, and you know, that was like, it's unwatchable because there's just too much stuff, right? So there's 5 different streams, and I was interested in you know, the battle of the bands culture there and the way second lines form and all that stuff. So I was like, let's do something where I need like a huge film crew to kind of even make sense of it. Fashionably Late was this sort of dialogue about like temporality. So like that was the collaboration I did with Leon on that we were talking about more classic kind of art school concerns about time. We were talking a lot about like Julia Kristeva, and we were talking a lot about public and private space and about the dialogue you have with your city and your personal timeline, right? So she, you know, got ready for a date basically in real time with a micro cassette recorder on the counter and just narrated what she was doing. And then it lasted an hour, and then we blew it up to 3 days, right? And she did everything in slow motion. And the thing that was fun about that was, you know, nobody saw that whole performance, right? Except me and the director of photography. We stood up for 3 days. Everybody else came in intermittently. So they got a completely different view. They saw this like durational living diorama piece, right? So they saw a thing on a traffic island that would have been, you know, at home in a, you know, Guillermo Gomez Pena kind of situation, right? But then I made this film out of it that was like the complete opposite of it. In the classical music thing, it was the same idea. I was interested in this idea of like playing around with, you know, how musicians are represented in portraiture and trying to like, you know, kind of like vice that open a little bit and make it a little bit more flexible so that you can get the idea of the stillness and you can really focus on what they're doing and their gesture, but you still hear. So some of it retroactively, I talk about it like it was some sort of exercise in multimodal design, but that's bullshit. That's not actually what I was doing. But that's, you know, that's where that came from.
Yeah, I like it's as if each time though, right, it's got a subject matter and it's got a specific kind of effect, but it also has this like occlusion built into it. And it's hard, anyway, trying to get my finger on what the different forms of the occlusion are, you know, what's been
cool.
left out.
They're all online. You should watch, you know, you skip through them. They're cool. You know, they're cool to watch.
You know, Shag, you talked about the constriction of time and space and the refugee experience, and you just sort of dropped almost in passing the bomb of not having seen your family for 9 years. And in a way, you know, sort of thinking about Sherie's consideration of place and this initial conversation about time, so in some ways it brings those two together and the tensions between them. But it also, for me, it reminds me of a kind of abstract philosophical problem, but that's actually, I think, pretty compelling, which is to say, right, you might think that time precedes history, but maybe history precedes time. You know what I mean? That history shapes time. And I was wondering if you could maybe entertain that thought in relationship to your work.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really interesting because one of the things that actually I was really drawn into when I was in middle school, I was so I grew up in the middle of war of Iran, Iraq, and after Islamic Revolution. And so my dad and my parents had a totally different experience of how they lived in Iran. So when I was in middle school, I was putting history book of my dad, like 2nd grade, with mine, and they had the same order and everything, but the characters were totally different. So one person was a bad person in a history, and the other one was totally different. And fun fact, I got a bad grade because I forgot which one is my era, and I got a bad grade actually in history because of that. So it was that happened, but my dad didn't allow me to go into his book actually. So it's I think time was kind of like played that weird role specifically in Iranian lives, like how we also had to kind of like fake it. Like a lot of people are, because of the rule that exists and because of the situation of the country, a lot of people live different life underground basically, and the life is totally different. So I think that time and space and also technology and internet had a huge impact actually of how my generation lived in. and specifically since, as I said, like in middle school, I was the first generation who had access to internet, for example. So we could be able to connect to others like me to talk. Otherwise, we couldn't, because we could get arrested because of the, gathering and everything like that. I don't know if I went off topic with your question, but yeah, I think. Did I went off topic?
No. I think you're just talking from personal experience there. Yes.
Yeah.
But in terms then too of thinking about how you're treating it in your work, that is to say that saying a lot. Could you unpack the role of history and this constriction of time and space in your work a little more?
In my work specifically. I mean, the fact that, I don't know if I'm kind of like 100% understand your exact point, but I think the fact that I started kind of like being obsessed with to that time and space from, as I said, from childhood. I had that experience. When I came here, that was the only way that I could connect. At the very beginning, Skype and video chat was not really common in Iran, and it was filtered, and or my parents didn't know how to use it, basically, because it was not that common. And when we started, so then my parents started, for example, sending me videos or pictures, like very pixelated, horrible videos from Iran, or when I was using WhatsApp or like different Vibers, because they were keep getting filtered from the government. I was seeing all pixelated, images. So I got really obsessed with that. I mean, specifically from the Hitostero also philosophy of in defense of poor images, and like how actually I grew up using that poor images because of the information that was coming from outside Iran to inside. Most of them were censored. They were not, you couldn't really have that. So I had that experience, and I started kind of like being in the point that, okay, this is the situation. I'm living in this world. I cannot go back. And how I can actually use this videos or images for flipping that, issue that I have, that a lot of refugees also have. So they cannot go back. But what does it mean if I'm kind of like using, what does it mean if I'm kind of like using technology to kind of like create that connection between people who are depart from each other and everything like that. So it's kind of like went towards that point.
Yes.
I'm going to interject for a second though. Sean, you had a question for Clark.
I know, but curious. Can I just follow up with Shag?
Yes.
Just because, just to say it, I think that does get to the point, Shag, and it's why I connected up with Cherie's concern about mapping. Like I think about, Shag, I know you've got a project that involves video cameras and windows, right? And to say like, there's a kind of technological limitation to what can be seen and how we understand that space. But what you're describing is actually there's a political condition to that seeing and that space that, limits what you can or can't see. And so requires this, this mediated and, interrupted perspective. Yes? Yes. Okay, but I saw that too. Sean has a question. I think maybe he means to be asked, no? Sean?
Oh yeah, I have a question for you, Clark.
Okay.
Well, since we're actually privileged here to have you manning our work in a physical gallery space in an actual show, I was wondering if you could just give us a little scene report from the gallery and tell us how the show's been going and how the audience reception's been.
Yes. Well, thanks for asking.
That's a great question, Sean. Thank you. Yeah.
It's a great question. And I'm delighted that you asked. I don't know, I think maybe Darren logged off, but he was here just the other day and brought a colleague who is, actually her name eludes me at the moment, but artist and New Media Caucus person at the CAA. But what? the show, let me switch my camera too.
Yeah.
If I can do this, so I can show you a little more of the show.
Ah.
Yeah, a little bit better.
There we go.
Oh yeah, that's a good shot.
Yes.
Nice shot, right?
So I'm tethered to the computer, but I can give you a little walkthrough, right? A little signage here. And actually I would do well to cue the sound on one of them. Just to give it, well, that I might compete with it. That might be a little bit too noisy.
But you might want to tell people about the sound, because I think that's really great what you did, Clark, the system you set up. So.
Absolutely. Excuse me. I'm
Yeah,
looking around for my remote.
I was interested in how you were negotiating, you know, the competing, you know, all the competing kind of works that might be showing at once.
It's going to mess me up. Here's Luke's. Oh, okay. So it's actually going to start with Porpentine. But so to give you a sense of it, here we've got the videos, right? If there are some 57 roughly videos in the show, yes, that we've got them on in 5 different screenings essentially. Yes, like the screenings on the website. You see that? So here's COVID, here's history, conflict, social justice, here's new sensibilities, cyborg ecofeminism, here's digital culture, and here is speculative fiction.
And I'll just add one reason why the social VR is in this kind of cylindrical form is we didn't want these categories that, you know, we came up with to be over-determined. So we have one kind of way to see it in the gallery. This is screening where it's broken up into these categories, and then also online, but you can choose how you watch the works. And then the social VR is where you can see all of the works, or at least, you know, still images of the works, and start to make new connections as well. So now back to you, Clark.
Cherie's just came on with, I turned the sound on that.
Yeah.
Right. So the way that we're I mean, what I wanted to show first of all is just to say that as a gallery exhibition, yes, the work hangs together in a different way, right? Different than the social VR, different than the screenings online. And it really operates more like a video installation, right? That there's a certain kind of cohesive whole. And like Carla said, if we've got these sort of loose categories, the works are speaking to each other from across the room in these dynamic and changing ways. At the same time, the work is essentially presented as a screening, and we're inviting the audience to come in and focus in, right? You could install yourself and you could watch the loop for an hour, yes, one or another. And we're inviting people to do so by basically triggering the sound, yes, is a way that you can focus in on, now I'm going to watch this screening, or now I'm going to go check out this piece instead, is with the remote and the sound. One effect that has, just to say though too, is that the sound obviously plays an important role in synthesizing the presentation as a whole. So it's another aspect of kind of like the shifting landscape of the installation.